So we are a week out from the most highly anticipated fight of the year in the UFC, and that is Dricus Du Plessis looking to defend his middleweight title against Khamzat Chimaev. UFC 319, ladies and gentlemen, this card is absolutely loaded. We have some outstanding stylistic clashes all over the card, and then the main event, it doesn't get any better than DDP versus Khamzat Chimaev, a guy in Dricus Du Plessis who's been undefeated in the UFC. He's building an incredible resume right now, taking out Sean Strickland twice, finishing Robert Whittaker, finishing Israel Adesanya. I think that he is starting to creep into middleweight GOAT territory, and if he can go out there and beat a wrecking ball like Khamzat Chimaev, it will only strengthen his case. And then we finally get Chimaev in the big title fight that we have all been waiting for. What a main event this is going to be. I am so excited for this card, man. And we have some really interesting matchups on here, right? In the co-main event, we have Lerone Murphy versus the new kid on the block, Aaron Pico. And it is very clear that the UFC, they're trying to push this guy, right? Aaron Pico's got a lot of the hardcore fans and these different MMA whispers out there going, hey, listen, man, Aaron Pico's the real deal. He's got crazy power in his hands, his wrestling pedigree. This guy's only 28. He's coming over to the UFC at the right time. And he's getting thrown into a co-main event against a guy who flies under the radar time and time again in Lerone Murphy. He might not be the most flashy. He might not be the most entertaining, but this guy, he knows how to win almost better than anybody in the featherweight division right now. He's got a complete skill set. He's incredibly well-rounded. I think that he is going to be a challenge for Aaron Pico in his debut, but we all know Aaron Pico got a lot of hype. He's a very dangerous fighter. Super interested to see how that one plays out. And then Geoff Neal versus Carlos Prates. Sign me up. What a certified banger this is. The boxing of Geoff Neal, the footwork, the defense against one of the most ferocious strikers in the welterweight division in Carlos Prates, who's looking to bounce back after his first loss in the UFC that came at the hands of Ian Machado Gary. And then we have Jared Cannonier, a top 10 middleweight who's been around for forever in the middleweight division, taking on the always dangerous striking puzzle that is Michael Venom Page. That's a very interesting style clash. And then opening up the main card, we have Tim Elliott, who I like to call the junkyard dog of the flyweight division, who's coming back after a long layoff to take on the super flashy and exciting Kai Asakura, who got walked into a title shot against Pantoja in his debut. There's no question that this is a step back in competition for Kai, but yet a rather interesting puzzle for him to figure out in Tim Elliott. We got some loaded prelims, man, but let's start with the very first fight of the evening between Karine Silva. And this is actually going to be Dione Barboza, man. Come on, UFC. How can you not update your damn website, man? We got a week till the fights. How is this not updated, dude? But the bottom line is I'm picking Karine Silva anyway, right? Dione Barboza, she's game, right? She's got good jiu-jitsu. She's got a well-rounded skill set. She actually beat Karine Silva prior to getting to the UFC. But we've just seen Karine Silva evolve her game, man. She's over at the Fighting Nerds. She's actually going out there and finding a lot of submissions since she's been in the UFC. And I think the hype is real around Karine Silva. I know that she's coming out, she took a loss recently. She's looking to bounce back here. And I know that Barboza, sure, she's got a good ground game to where maybe it cancels out and we see this thing play out on the feet. But Barboza is stepping in for short notice. This is a much harder fight than J.J. Aldridge, though, right? So Karine does have her hands a little bit more full here, but I still think Karine Silva is the better fighter at this point, and I think that she's really hitting her stride at the right time. I think Karine Silva beats Barboza by decision. Man, get J.J. Aldridge off this damn website, dog. All right, now let's get it rolling, man. We got Bryan Battle versus Nursulton Ruziboev. I'm going to go Nursulton Ruziboev here. Listen, I know a lot of people are really high on Bryan Battle right now, but I struggle to see Bryan Battle doing well in the middleweight division. Listen, I know that you can't really doubt Bryan, right? What we've seen from him coming off of The Ultimate Fighter, had the ugly-ass hair, right? The dumbass nickname where he was Pooh Bear or something like that, right? He shaved the hair off, dyed it blonde. He's getting on the microphone in Paris, yelling and screaming, carrying on after beating Kevin Jesay. Bryan Battle knows what he's doing. He's starting to market himself really well. He went out there against Randy Brown, and that was a snooze fest, right? And I thought that was a robbery, and I picked Bryan Battle to win that fight. But we saw him have some issues with the range and the speed of Randy Brown, right? And if you look at a guy who's tall, who's lean, who's got a similar kind of style, that is a guy like Nursulton Ruziboev is a super dangerous guy in this weight class at middleweight. That is the key here, right? This is going to be at 185 pounds, where if this is a welterweight, I favor Bryan Battle. The pace, smudging him up against the fence, and we've seen that Ruziboev has very questionable takedown defense. But guys, I have said that in the middleweight division, when he's not draining himself, I think that Nursulton Ruziboev is a problem in this weight class, right? I feel like he defends takedowns better. He's a super tall guy. I mean, he's 6'5". It's not often that you see, even at middleweight, that's a huge guy, right? He's got sniper-like striking, dangerous power in his right hand. And I feel like if he can stop the takedowns and not allow Battle to just push him up against the fence and control him, I think he keeps this out in space, uses those front kicks from range and lines up some of those shots because, look, Bryan Battle's got decent striking. His hands are decent. He's got a pretty good ground game, but when he can't push you up against the fence and kind of turn things into more of that phone booth firefight, Bryan Battle tends to struggle, man. And I think that that's what he was nervous of against Randy Brown. And I think that Nursulton Ruziboev, when he is not draining himself to 170 pounds, because I know it wasn't good against Buckley, right? And if you're looking at Buckley, who, we saw him get dominated by Usman, but Buckley's shown us that he's a pretty well-rounded fighter here, right? And I know Battle's got a decent ground game, but I think that the range, the precision, and the versatility when it comes to the striking, and not just, I'm counting on Ruziboev's takedown defense holding up here, right? So if he can stop the takedowns, keep Battle from pushing him up against the fence, I think that Nursulton Ruziboev actually finishes Bryan Battle in this fight. I could just see him finding a right hand. I could see him punishing him with those front kicks from range. I just don't know how well Bryan Battle does at 185 pounds. But if he can move forward, push Ruziboev up against the fence, get those takedowns and put him on his back, Bryan Battle can definitely win this fight. And I would say that he's the more gritty type of fighter, right? I think Bryan has more ways to win here, but I just don't know that he could go out there and implement the same kind of game plan against a tall, rangy, dangerous guy in Nursulton Ruziboev, who to me seems like is a different fighter at 185 when he's not making that crazy cut to 170. Give me Nursulton Ruziboev to knock out Bryan Battle. Next, we got Edson Barboza versus Drakkar Klose. This is an interesting one here, right? Because Edson Barboza is getting a little bit older now, right? He's kind of definitely not in his prime anymore. But the one thing about Barboza, he always shows up in tremendous shape. We know he's got lightning fast kicks. He's very dynamic, and he's one of the best kickers that we've ever seen in UFC history, right? And his biggest weakness on the feet has always been in boxing range, right? So if you can do what kind of we saw Lerone Murphy do, pull him into those, those close quarter exchanges, that's where Edson tends to struggle, in his career, especially towards the later end here, right? And when you look at a guy like Drakkar Klose, Klose isn't a world beater, man, but he's still pretty good, right? He's got decent grappling, he's got some power, and he likes to kind of turn things into a little bit of a grit fest. But I feel like that's a problem in this fight. I feel like Edson Barboza, for a guy that, he's not in his prime anymore, I think Edson Barboza wins a decision here. I feel like his speed, I feel like his versatility when it comes to the kicks, I just think he's going to be banging leg kicks from the outside, mixing in some really good, knees up the middle, threatening close every time he tries to close the distance. Because if Drakkar is stuck on the feet with Barboza for 15 minutes, I just feel like Edson's going to be a step ahead the whole time. His speed, while his boxing, defense is a little bit questionable, I still feel like his overall striking is better than Drakkar Klose. And you got to remember, Drakkar Klose, he's not really in his prime either, right? So this is two older guys. I feel like Barboza's been fighting a lot of these, young, dangerous guys like a Lerone Murphy. This is a step back here. And I know that Klose has got some power when it comes to the grappling, but we know that, if you're not a Khabib Nurmagomedov or some, unbelievably talented fighter, it's hard to control Barboza. He will find a way to get back to his feet. We do see him slow down a little bit, but I still feel comfortable here picking Barboza by decision. I feel like the speed and the kicks from range, they're going to be nasty, man. And I feel like he's going to bang Drakkar Klose's ass up in this fight. Give me Edson Barboza by decision. Next, we got Chase Hooper versus the great ape Alexander Hernandez. Now, this is an interesting one here because I know so many people, they're so quick to go Chase Hooper, Chase Hooper, Chase Hooper. Now, I am going to pick Chase Hooper, and I'm going to pick him by second round submission because I think it's going to take some time for Chase Hooper to figure this one out here. But we've clearly seen Chase Hooper, he's really coming into his own, man, right? He was a featherweight, and he just seemed super frail, right? He's kind of a tall, lanky guy at 6'1", right? And even at lightweight, he's a big guy, right? But he's really starting to fill out into his frame. And that recent fight against Slava Klose, right? I know he just came off the win against Jim Miller, but they've kind of been giving him the slow play treatment, right? The old heads, like a Jim Miller, right? And then, he was in there against a guy who's one-dimensional like Slava Klose. But we saw him drop Slava, right? And if you get dropped by Chase Hooper, you're in a world of trouble because he has outstanding jiu-jitsu skills. He blends the overall grappling really well together. And now that his striking is starting to improve, this guy is a problem. Now, I will say this. I don't know that he's going to make quick, light work of Alexander Hernandez because while Alexander is, he's most well known for that, amazing combination that Cerrone landed. That picture-perfect combination to where it looked like Cerrone was hitting pads, but he was landing on Alexander Hernandez's face, man. You remember that Muay Thai combo that was beautiful by Cowboy Cerrone? But we know that Hernandez got, it was the impressive performances here and there, and then he's just kind of fizzled out, right? He's kind of just been a guy to where he is riding a little bit of momentum into this. So I feel like his build, right? He's kind of a shorter guy. He's got these long arms, and he's kind of got this awkward build to where I feel like he might be able to defend the takedowns early, which is where I think things can get a little hairy because I do think that Hernandez is still probably the better striker here. So maybe if he could put the pressure on Chase Hooper, back him up, land some shots, maybe he could pull off an upset here. But I ultimately think that Chase Hooper, this guy is just really, the UFC's building him the right way, man. Like they're giving him the perfect style of opponents, and this kind of is no different here, right? At one point, there was a lot of hope for Alexander Hernandez, right? I think it was the Dariush win or whatever, right? Where a lot of people are like, this is the next guy, right? He's yoked up, he's in great shape. And then he got embarrassed by Cerrone, and it feels like that fight just took something out of Hernandez, man. Like while he's still well-rounded, I feel like this is a little bit of more of a challenge than people think for Chase Hooper, but I do believe that after a kind of a closer first round, we see Chase Hooper get the fight to the floor, implement a smart game plan here, and I think Chase Hooper finds that second round submission over Alexander Hernandez. There's just way too much of a gap when it comes to when the fight hits the floor, and the fact that the striking is improving, Chase Hooper's becoming a slow but gradual nightmare in the lightweight division. Give me Chase Hooper by second round sub. Next, we have Jessica Andrade versus Lupita Godinez. Loopy. Give me Loopy Godinez here by decision. Listen, I kind of wrestled with the idea of picking Jessica Andrade here because, well, I think that Loopy Godinez has a very good skill set. I think that she's the more technical fighter. That doesn't always mean that you're going to win the fight, especially in WMMA, because one of the things we've seen with Andrade, while she's not in her prime per se, she still carries the same type of energy, right? She's got these big, powerful, winging hooks that she throws. She gets into the pocket, and she has a very clear power advantage here, right? And I think that is what makes Jessica so dangerous, is she's always been one of the harder hitters out there. But I feel like at this point in her career, we're seeing her have lapses in judgment when it comes to the fight IQ. And I feel like this fight is one of those to where Andrade is going to have some moments at points in time, but then we're just going to see Godinez level change. Because I think with Loopy on the feet, she's got pretty technical striking, she can stick and move, and she's got good footwork to where while Andrade tries to dig her feet in and throw those big shots, she struggles against people that have good movement, right? And that's what Loopy has, good movement, and she is a smart fighter. Now, while Loopy's had some questionable losses, right, and then she goes out there and is winning these kind of close fights, I feel like it's her fight IQ that is going to win this fight for her. I feel like she's going to stick and move, use good footwork, and then mix in the wrestling to which is ultimately going to get her the victory in this fight. Give me Loopy Godinez getting this done by a unanimous decision. I feel like she's just a more technical fighter, and she's going to blend things together very well and not allow Andrade to just sit there and throw these big power shots. Give me Loopy Godinez. I just think she's better at this point in time. Next, we have Gerald Meerschaert versus Michal Oleksiejczuk. I'm going to go Michal Oleksiejczuk by first round knockout. Now, I want to be very clear here. If Michal does not get the first round knockout, I think that there is a real shot that Gerald Meerschaert probably wins this fight, and not just wins, I think he gets a submission. So I think this fight ends in a finish regardless of who wins, but I am going to favor Michal Oleksiejczuk here. And the reason is, look, GM3, that RDR loss, man, like I was ripping on RDR for so long for that, right? To where I finally came around and I was like, look, RDR's beating Whitaker, man, right? But for a while I was like, I just don't know. Like, how do you go life and death with Gerald Meerschaert, right? I know that GM3 has like some crazy records, man. Like, this is one of the more, dangerous submission artists in middleweight history, right? Which is kind of crazy. But GM3 he's so hittable, man. And as he's gotten a little bit older, he's older in his career now, right? We've seen the fights where he's getting his ass beat, right? Like against Shabazian, and then he will come back and find a submission, right? He just pulls shit out of his ass, just like Paul Craig. Like, he's basically kind of like a Paul Craig, but I would say a little bit better at times, right? But the difference with GM3 is if you get hit by a guy like Michal Oleksiejczuk at this point in your career, like, I just feel like it's a problem, right? But some of the red flags are the fact that Michal was taken down and he hurt Kevin Holland, and then he fell into a submission where he got armbarred, right? So it's like, if you're getting submitted by Kevin Holland, I feel like a guy like GM3 who's better on the ground, he could put you in some real trouble. But we're really just seeing, like, if you look at the Dricus Du Plessis fight, like Michal Oleksiejczuk training over at the Fighting Nerds with Kyle Bahalio, lost to Kaio back in the day, right? Now he's leveling up his skill set, and this guy's got some bricks in his hands, dude, right? He's one of, I'd say this all the time, I think that Michal's one of the better boxers in the division, dude. Like, he's got a good high guard, just kind of moves forward, constantly keeping his head moving, and I just feel like he's going to move forward into range while not getting too close to Meerschaert, and then he's just going to land some of those power shots on the feet to where he's just going to be able to hurt GM3 bad, man. And I feel like GM3 is not going to make it out of there, because the key against GM3 is, if you can hurt him, don't necessarily follow him to the ground and play that game with him, right? Don't allow him, to pull guard, kind of rope you into surviving, to where if you let him get back up or you just clip him with a good shot on the feet, that'll be all she wrote. So I think that if this fight goes past the first round, I definitely see where Gerald Meerschaert can win here and pull off that kind of savvy, crafty performance that GM3 is known for. But I feel like Michal's hitting his stride right now, man. I feel like this guy's power and his boxing and the way that he's going to close down Gerald, like, I just feel like it's going to be a problem. But I will say this, man. Gerald Meerschaert, he only basically gets knocked out by some of the most dangerous guys we've seen, like the Joe Pyfers, the Khamzat Chimaev. So GM3, while he's eating some big shots, he doesn't really get put out. But I'm telling you right now, Michal Oleksiejczuk, man, people sleep on this guy's boxing. He's got good power, but his technique is actually really, really good. I think he lands on Gerald Meerschaert early and gets him out of there in the first round. So I am going to go Michal here by first round KO. Next, we got Bobby Green versus Diego Ferreira. Now, this is an interesting fight here, because I was convinced the moment that this fight got announced, I'm like, Diego Ferreira is absolutely winning this fight, right? He's the guy that, he's 40 years of age. He's a little bit older than Bobby, but when you look at their recent performances, like, Diego Ferreira is going out there and finishing a guy like Mateusz Rambecki, right? He's going out there and, he lost to Grant Dawson, but he's not, he's kind of hanging in there with him, right? And I know that Bobby Green knocked out Grant Dawson, which, let's be honest, man, that was kind of a fluke, right? Because if they run that back, I think Grant Dawson completely dominates him. But we see Diego Ferreira still putting on good performances, man. Like, even though he's getting older, he's still putting on these good performances. He's got that, he's got a really good jiu-jitsu game, pretty good takedowns of his own, right? He's a little bit kind of slower on the feet, but he definitely possesses more power than Bobby Green. And I think that he is going to land on Bobby Green at some point, and that's why I'm picking Diego Ferreira by KO in this fight. Listen, there's this shot that Bobby Green goes out there, right? To be fair to Bobby, he's only been fighting the best of the best, right? He got knocked out by what looks like one of the most dangerous striking prospects in the UFC right now in Mauricio Rufy, right? Got highlight reel KO. That's why the UFC booked that fight. They wanted Rufy to get a highlight reel KO, right? And then he's going out there losing to some of these dangerous guys, right? So it's not like he's fighting nobodies, right? And he's fighting good strikers. Right, to where Diego Ferreira, he's not as good of a striker as those guys. But it's the problem of, I feel like Bobby Green has no chin anymore, man. And he's displayed some bad fight IQ. Like, I know that Paddy Pimblett is really good, but shooting a takedown on Paddy, like, what are you thinking? Bobby Green's best shot was to keep the fight on the feet, right? Bobby Green's always been known for his, what's up, man, what's up? That Street Fighter OG boxing type of style. Hands low, bobbing and moving, talking to you. And the one thing about Bobby Green is, even though he's gotten a little bit older, That speed has went nowhere, man. He is still going to be the faster fighter here, but the way that he fights, I say this all the time, guys, right? And Roy Jones Jr. in boxing, it was the perfect example. Whenever you start to get a little older, and that eyesight, can't talk, man, the eyesight and your reaction time slow down just a bit. That's where things start to get hairy. It's where they get hairy, right? You look at Anderson Silva, Adesanya, you start to rely on all this movement, and your hands are kind of low. The minute you get a step back in that department, it just feels like it starts to become the beginning of the end, right? Where if you're a guy like Mike Tyson, remember when Roy and Tyson had that boxing match? Tyson can fight like that till he's 100, right? Like that style just works, right? The hands up, peekaboo style, to where Green, it's hands low, relying on reaction time. So while Bobby still fights very youthful, I just don't think he can take the damage. And I know at UFC 300, he put on a vintage Bobby Green performance. And that's why I picked him to win, because he was going to be significantly faster than Jim Miller. But I feel like with the grappling threat that Diego possesses, the submission threat, he's got decent wrestling. And I feel like on the feet, we've seen if this guy lands, he can knock people out. I think it was the Michael Johnson knockout, right? I mean, if he lands clean, I just feel like he's knocking Bobby Green out. And Bobby, he's going to have to go out there, put the volume on him, and maybe he can, get a TKO as the fight progresses, because we have seen him put out a guy like Grant Dawson with one shot, right? So Bobby definitely has power, but he's more of an accumulation volume type of striker, right? Particularly with the boxing. And I do think Bobby is underrated grappling, right? He's got decent grappling of his own, but he's not a better grappler than Diego in this fight. So Diego has more ways to win this fight. I could even see him submitting Bobby Green possibly, but I'm going to say that he lands a shot, rattles Bobby Green, and then follows up and gets him out of there. I just cannot trust the chin of Bobby Green right now at all. But I will say this, it would not surprise me, given the speed of Bobby Green, if he can dodge those big shots and can still somehow eat a shot, I could see him going out there and outpointing Diego Ferreira, or maybe even getting him out of there. But I got to go Diego right now, especially that Mateusz Rebecki performance. We clearly see that this guy's a dog. He's got power. He's got more ways to win this fight. Give me Diego Ferreira by third round finish. Knockout. Up to the main card, we have Tim Elliott versus Kai Asakura. This is an interesting fight, man, because at one point, Tim Elliott, I call him the junkyard dog of the flyweight division, right? He's a guy that nothing is particularly great, right? His striking's not really great. His ground game, it's super, chaotic. He can push a pace on you. And he's been in there with the who's who of the flyweight division. He's been around for forever, but he's coming off of a long layoff now, right? And when you're starting to get up there in age, you're one of the older guys in the weight class in a division that is, everyone's got technique, everyone's got speed. That's not a good sign. That's not a good sign at all. And to be sidelined that long, coming back against a super dangerous guy like Kai Asakura, it kind of just spells disaster at this point, right, for Tim Elliott. Now, I will say this, Tim Elliott's been racking off some good wins, right? He's a guy that has still shown prior to the layoff that he could go out there and compete with some of the best guys in the world, right? We've seen that from Tim Elliott, the pressure, the pace, his submission game, right? And even his striking, it's not the greatest, but it's opened up because of the pace and the grappling threat that he brings. And it's very possible that he could go out there with a smart game plan, avoid the big shots of Kai Asakura, and he could go out there and shock us here. But I just don't think we see that, man. I feel like Kai Asakura is going to go out there and starch Tim Elliott in the first round. Listen, I know that when fighters come over from different promotions, we kind of got to pump the brakes. This dude got walked into a title shot against one of the greatest flyweights we've ever seen in Pantoja. So it's like he was in there against the top guy right away, and now this just feels like a huge step back. But Tim Elliott, he still possesses, he's like a Dollar Tree version of Pantoja, right? He's got a pretty solid ground game. He can push a pace. Tim Elliott can mix it up. He's got the, much more UFC experience here. But being older, having a long layoff, I feel like this is a super favorable matchup for Kai Asakura. If Tim can't get the takedowns, which he's going to be desperate for, he's going to get knocked out by Kai, dude. Because we even saw in the Pantoja fight, you see how fast Kai Asakura is in this weight class. Go back and watch his Rizin fights. He's super explosive, devastating knees up the middle, flying knees, good power in his kicks and in his hands, right? And he was basically a bantamweight for most of his career. So coming down to flyweight, right, and it seems like he's kind of mastered this weight cut. He's a strong guy. He's a strong guy in this weight class, and I just don't think that Tim Elliott's going to be able to just go out there and have his way with him in the grappling. And if this stays on the feet, it's not even close. Asakura is way faster, way more power, way more dangerful. I almost said way more dangerful. Dangerful, man. Kai Asakura is super dangerous, and I think he wins this fight by KO in the very first round. I think that he's going to land some good shots on the feet, maybe catches Elliott with a knee on the way in. I just think that this is a disaster for Elliott, man. Like, guys that take a long layoff and you're getting older, that's kind of a red flag, but especially when you're in the lighter weight classes, that just feels like just a complete recipe for a disaster to me, man. And I just feel like we're going to see a shell of Tim Elliott at this point. I just don't think he's going to be the same guy that's going out there and having these crazy fights, with a guy like a Makayev or something. I just don't see that happening here against a super dangerous guy who's in his prime. The UFC seems like they're giving Kai kind of a layup here, and they're hoping that he can get a win. I think he goes out there and gets a very impressive first-round KO over Tim Elliott, man. Kai is super explosive, super dangerous. I think he's in his prime, and Tim Elliott, I just don't see him being that same guy coming back from the layoff. Give me Kai and his explosiveness to get this one done. Next, we got Jared Cannonier versus MVP. What a fight this is, man, right? And I've kind of went back and forth on this a little bit, right? But I am ultimately going to go MVP by decision, and here's why. I know a lot of people, they're going to say, look, Jared Cannonier, dude, he fought at heavyweight, he fought at light heavyweight, and he's kind of filled out at middleweight to be, this more leaned out guy who still carries the power, and that is all very true, right? But Jared Cannonier is 40-some years of age now, right? And I know that he turned back the dials, man, because he went out there, was getting the shit kicked out of him by RoboCop, and RoboCop just emptied the tank and had nothing in it. Cannonier weathered the storm and was able to come back and get a nice knockout win, and that was super impressive by Jared Cannonier. Prove me wrong, because I picked against him in that fight. But here's the reality, man. Jared Cannonier is not a grappler, right? I know people are like, well, if he comes in with a grapple-heavy game plan, he can take MVP down, he can control him, when does Jared Cannonier do that? Right, I know if he hurts guys on the feet, he'll follow him down, land some good ground and pound. And by the way, if MVP does end up on the bottom underneath Jared Cannonier, he's going to get probably TKO'd, because Cannonier, he's a super strong guy, very physical, and does have decent grappling, right? And those elbows from the top position, I think that he would be able to ground and pound out Michael Venom Page. But the speed that MVP brings to the table is just something that Jared has never seen, right? And MVP, he's constantly going in there against guys that are trying to take him down. And he's a guy that's fought down at welterweight, right? And I know that he's coming off of that impressive win over Shara Magomedov, to where I'm like, look, he's going to go out there and embarrass Shara, right? He's way faster. And if you're just going to stand in front of MVP, you're behind. That karate puzzle where it looks like he's surfing out there, right? And then just explodes in the range with a right hand, flying knees. Super unorthodox, man. It's very hard to prepare for MVP. And I see Jared just being so hesitant, man, because Jared at times, he was even hesitant against a guy like Izzy. And I know Izzy's one of the best middleweights we've seen, but MVP is just a more unpredictable style. So if you're frozen against a guy like Adesanya and you're struggling to kind of build your reads and struggling to get going, you're struggling against a guy like Robert Whittaker with the rhythm, the jab, the high kicks, I just feel like this is a recipe for a disaster for Jared, man. Because MVP's rhythm is different. It's hard to pick up on his patterns. Now, I do see a scenario to where Jared can time a leg kick, right? Like we saw Douglas Lima do back in Bellator, which was the only time MVP I think's been finished, was a perfectly timed calf kick into a perfectly timed uppercut. You couldn't have scripted it any better than that. But is Jared going to do that? I don't think so, right? Is he the heaviest hitter that MVP's been in there with? For sure. And he's the strongest guy that he's been in there with. And it is concerning because MVP was getting, out-grappled by guys like Ian Gary, right? And if you're getting out-grappled by Ian Gary, it just makes you think, well, even though Ian Gary's got underrated grappling, right? We're seeing him really level up his ground skills. It just feels like if Jared gets a hold of you, it's going to be a problem. But he's got to get a hold of him first, right? This is in the big octagon. This isn't in the apex here where this is going to be close quarters, and I feel like Jared is going to have a very hard time getting a hold of MVP. Now, we've seen Jared apply really good pressure on guys. Right? We saw the beatdown, the points he was racking up against Marvin Vettori. Beat the hell out of Vettori. Right? So we've seen where Jared can go out there and he's basically only been fighting the best guys in the middleweight division. Right? And he's only losing to the best guys. But it's the fact that MVP's style is so tricky, dude. In at middleweight, he is still lightning fast. He's lightning fast. He's faster than just about everybody in this weight class. And he's a puzzle. And at Jared's age, I just don't know that he's going to have the speed and the ability to close down MVP and get a hold of him. And I feel like he's going to get frustrated. And every time he does try to close down MVP he doesn't let you get a takedown for free. He doesn't let you close him down for free. He's going to just sting Jared Cannonier every time Jared tries to close range. That right hand out of nowhere, he'll angle off. The footwork, he's going to be feinting. I think Jared's going to be biting on things, and then he's just going to start to throw because he's going to get frustrated, and then that's when MVP is going to counter. Now, I don't think that this is going to be the most entertaining fight, right? Because I do think if Jared can grapple and can show us that he can take down MVP and control him, then Jared will win the fight. But I just don't know at this point in his career that he's going to be able to do that. I feel like MVP's style is a nightmare here for Jared, man. I think it is. And Jared, yes, he has power, but he's not that fast. He's not that fast. He's never been that fast, man. And I feel like he switches stances well. Maybe he's going to attack the legs of MVP, try to slow him down, try to knock him off balance, get a hold of him, some of those things. And of course, if Jared lands, he could put him out because Jared's got crazy power. But I just think that the speed, and the puzzle that is MVP, I just feel like it's going to be too much for Jared Cannonier in this fight, man. That's the reality. And I feel like MVP, a lot of his fights, he's super flashy and entertaining, but they're kind of overrated to be real. Like they are, right? Because a lot of the time it's him just kind of surfing around, taunting, emoting on guys, which is fun, throwing pokeballs, doing and it is fun. I don't think he KOs Cannonier, though. I mean, we've seen Cannonier take some big shots, right? He's been dropped a lot, right? Against Robert Whittaker, against a guy like RoboCop. And he's not getting put out, right? But again, it's kind of a different striker. It's the precision of MVP. I just feel like the feints, the rhythm, the timing, every time Jared feels like he's getting close, MVP's going to sting him. And then that's going to be the difference. MVP's going to win the moments. Maybe Cannonier kind of throws out more volume, tries to clinch him up against the fence. But I feel like MVP is just going to have the answers here. I think his speed, footwork, and just his style, I just feel like it's going to be too troubling for Jared in this fight. Give me MVP by decision. I don't know that this is going to be the most exciting fight, though, here. And if MVP wins, he's going to crack into the top 10 in the middleweight division. Hard to see him having a lot of success at the top of the weight class considering how good these grapplers are. But give me MVP to get by the older Jared Cannonier. Next, we got Geoff Neal versus Carlos Prates. Listen, man, I'm super excited for this fight because I think that stylistically, Geoff Neal cannot be counted out of this fight. I think that Geoff Neal, he actually has some of the better boxing in the weight class, right? I think that Geoff Neal, if he could go in there and he can time Carlos Prates' entries, right? If he can rely on the boxing, if he could scoot and move, right? I'd say Geoff Neal's dancing in there, right? He's got the high guard, kind of moving around, the footwork, the rhythm. If Geoff can get into a rhythm, he can have success here. But the problem is, man, Carlos Prates kind of reminds me of an Alex Pineda here, right? It's the length. It's these long, freakish kind of built guys that they just carry a different power, and that's what Prates has. That's what he has, right? He's got super dangerous knees, right? We've seen him kind of from the outside step in and throw those nasty knees like he did against Charles Radke, right? And knock you out, right? Drop you with the liver shot. He's got that big winging left hand, right? Sometimes he keeps it straight, sometimes he loops it, right? So Carlos does become a little predictable at times, right? And he is coming off of his first loss against Ian Machado Gary. So, and we saw him pour it on late, right? And I feel like part of it was maybe Prates was questioning his gas tank being in a 5-round fight in the UFC for the first time. Maybe, I don't know. But I feel like Carlos Prates has more tools here, right? As much as I want to pick Geoff Neal because I really like Geoff, dude. I like his boxing. I like his style. He's well coached over at Fortis MMA with Saif Saud. Right, maybe Geoff Neal fights a good game plan, clinches with Prates early. Geoff Neal's got some nasty uppercuts in the clinch. We've seen him get into these clinch fests, right? Against Shavkat, trying to kind of neutralize him. Against Ian Gary, right? And he was having close fights with those guys, right? Lost a close fight to Gary, got finished by Shavkat later in the fight, but that was a crazy fight. So Geoff Neal, been against some of the best guys in the world, he can absolutely hang with them. But it's the fact that Carlos Prates, this guy just hits different in this weight class, man. So I'm going to go Carlos Prates by second round knockout. I think it's close at first. I think Geoff Neal might even rock Carlos Prates. It wouldn't surprise me because I think that Geoff is the better boxer. But it's just the way that Prates strikes, man. He's super fast and rangy, and the weapons that he brings, the kicks, the knees, and even just his boxing is actually pretty good, right? I know he's a Muay Thai style striker, but we've really seen an evolution in his boxing, right? He kind of hides behind that shoulder. He's moving really well, slipping his head around. And that left hand, man, when he lands that on anybody in this weight class, it hurts him. We saw him kind of fumble the finish against Gary. He could have had him out of there. Right, so I feel like in this fight, Geoff Neal, you can't write him off, though. I think Geoff Neal can definitely win this fight, man. Like, I feel like people are writing off Geoff Neal too much here because Geoff's really good. We've seen him in there against, beat the heck out of Bilal Muhammad. We saw what he did to Vicente Luque. But when he's in there against these super rangy kind of strikers like Gary, he tends to struggle with the distance to where he relies on clinching. So if he does that, then we may get a boring fight here. But I don't know that he's able to just control Prates up against the fence, though. We've seen that Prates has pretty good takedown defense. And if he does get taken down, he gets back up pretty quickly. Right? And training over at the Fighting Nerds, I mean, these guys, they're different, man. They are different, and I feel like that overall Muay Thai style of striking from Prates is just going to be a nightmare for Geoff here. While Geoff has a boxing advantage, I think, he gets hit. And I know he's durable, but if you're getting hit by Carlos Prates, he'll smell blood in the water, he'll hunt you down, back you up against the fence, and when that left hand lands, man, it puts guys out. I feel like he's got some of the most power in this weight class for sure. It's these freakishly like how Prates built, right? These tall, lean frames that just have this different kind of torque. Now, I will say, Prates gets a little bit predictable, right? He kind of tends to overswing and become so dependent upon that left hand to where I could see Neal kind of touching him up with the boxing because Geoff's very slick on the feet, man. But I feel like Geoff might land a shot, get overconfident, and then that's when Prates is going to catch him. So I think that this is actually a much closer fight than what people think. But I just think that the overall arsenal that Prates brings, I think he's going to be hungry to come back and get a victory after losing to Ian Gary. This is a favorable stylistic matchup for Prates, where Geoff Neal still he's got really good takedown defense, so it's not like Prates is going to be able to take him down. If anyone's taking anyone down, I think it would be Neal taking down Prates, and I think that Neal has an edge there. But, is he going to use it? I think he is, because I feel like if you stand at range with Prates, that's just a bad idea. But I think that Carlos is going to come into this and have the answers for Geoff Neal here, man. And it sucks because I really like Geoff. I like his style. I like his boxing. And when he hits his flow state, man, he's super fun to watch. And I feel like he's one of the most underrated guys in the welterweight division. But given, he's coming off that impressive KO win against RDA, right? But that's an older RDA, right? This fight was supposed to happen, I think, back at UFC 314 where Neal had to pull out. That's why Prates had to, wait a few weeks and fight Gary. I just feel like at this point in time, Prates is just motivated, dude, and his style's super dangerous. Geoff just can't get hit clean. And I feel like Geoff dealing with a guy that's got some power here. We saw Shavkat landing some good shots, and I know Shavkat's got the takedown threat, but if you're getting hit by Prates, it's different. So maybe Geoff can pull this off, turn this into a boxing match, but I feel like Carlos Prates is going to be a little bit too much here. And I feel like maybe Neal will have early success, but eventually Prates is going to hit him with a shot, back him up, and then get him out of there with a TKO stoppage. Give me Carlos Prates by second round knockout. The guy's dangerous, man. Next, co-main event, we have Lerone Murphy versus Aaron Pico. Now, those of you that have been watching the channel, you know that I'm one of those that I've been high on Aaron Pico. I think that he's super dangerous. He's got really good boxing. He's got outstanding wrestling skills, right? I mean, if this guy kept, going the wrestling route, I feel like he would have made it to the Olympics, right? He's training with Sam Calavita for strength and conditioning. He is super well coached, man. Like I saw him working with Henry Cejudo. Cejudo's been singing his praises. Everyone seems to be singing the Aaron Pico praises, man. In the MMA world, right? All the experts out there, right? And I am high on Aaron Pico. I'm a fan, and I hope that he can win this fight. But I just think that Lerone Murphy is going to win this fight by decision, man. I really do. Look, I want to see Aaron Pico win, but everyone's blowing the hype way out of proportion. Like, I thought that maybe I was the odd man out thinking that Aaron Pico could win this. And the fact that I saw Pico as the favorite, I think it's crazy. I think it's absolutely crazy, right? And I feel like the UFC, to a degree, they're trying to punish guys like an Evloev or Lerone Murphy for going to so many decisions. Because it's like, well, why would the UFC? It was supposed to be Pico versus Evloev, right? Which I thought Mobstar would have beaten Aaron Pico. And then now you're getting a guy like Lerone Murphy, who's maybe not as good of a grappler as Mobstar Evloev, but Lerone Murphy mixes things together so well, dude. Right? And I feel like the UFC's like we got two decision guys here. Let's give him Aaron Pico and see if Pico can take one of these guys out. That's what it seems to me. That's why I was saying it feels like the UFC's trying to use Pico as a hitman here, right? And Pico, yeah, he's dangerous. He's 28 years of age, right? And I feel like he's hitting his stride, right? He's in his prime now. But who's he beating? Right? Henry Corrales, I mean, that guy, he was 38 years of age, and yeah, we saw Pico fight smart, implement his ground and pound, take him down, but he was kind of having a hard time controlling him when I watched that fight back, right? And then on the feet, I mean, he's gotten a lot bigger, right? He's kind of filled out into his frame because he was just a young kid in his early fighting days, right? To where now, I mean, he's just getting, he just looks slow to me. He looks a little bit slower, kind of yoked up, right? And it just seems like, even though he does have good wrestling, and I don't think Lerone's going to be able to take him down, I just don't know that he's going to be able to take Lerone down and control him. I just feel like this is such a huge step up in competition, man. And we see this with a lot of the PFL Bellator guys. They come over and they have some adversity early. And it's not like Pico's getting thrown in there against a guy that's not ranked or is at the back of the rankings. He's getting thrown in there against an undefeated guy in Lerone Murphy, who's beating a Josh Emmett, who's beating a Dan Ige, right? Who's beating an Edson Barboza. Those guys are better than anyone that Aaron Pico has fought. But then it's kind of hard to hold it against Aaron Pico like, well, who have you fought? Because it's not his fault, right? And people are like, well, he was never a champion. Well, I think he was supposed to fight for a belt in PFL, and they promised him something, and it never ended up happening. So at the end of the day, Aaron Pico, I think he's going to be fun in this weight class. I think I've said he's like a more technical version of a Michael Chandler, super explosive, dangerous power in his hands, good wrestling. But I don't see him taking guys down and just completely controlling them. And I don't think he does that to Lerone. And I know that Aaron's over at Jackson Wink. He's well coached. He's got all the coaching, all the people around him. But at the end of the day, when you get in there, a fight is a fight. And he's never been in there with anyone as complete or as good as Lerone Murphy. That's the reality. And this is a big opportunity for Lerone Murphy. I think his speed, I think his striking is really, really good. I think he's a better striker than Aaron Pico. Maybe Pico's the better boxer with more power. But I feel like Lerone can mix this up, man. I think he's going to mix things up, kick from range, switch stances, stick and move, give him a lot of different looks. And I noticed that about Pico, man. Younger in his career, those shots were really snapping. Nasty left hook to the body, good boxing, good power, good leg kicks, solid ground and pound. But as he seems like he's kind of gotten a little bit bigger, it seems like things are a little bit more stiff and kind of muscled out there. And we just saw Lerone in there against Josh Emmett, a super dangerous power puncher in this weight class. So you have to be super careful of in there because if you get reckless, you'll get knocked out. Right? And I know that Aaron Pico's maybe a little bit more finesse than a guy like a Dan Ige or a Josh Emmett. So that's a fair argument there. I hope Aaron Pico wins this fight. I think it would be fun for the UFC. It would be fun for the weight class. And it's very clear that the UFC is pushing this guy, including him in the countdown, right? Giving him his own little press conference thing with John Anik. They are building this guy up because they see him as being kind of maybe the next big thing in this weight class. He's got a lot of hype behind him. At one point, he was one of the most hyped up prospects in MMA, period. And he was a young kid. He was losing to some guys he shouldn't have been losing to, but he was still young, right? And I feel like he's been on a crazy win streak here. He's surrounding him with great people. He's really well coached, and I think he's going to be very prepared. But at the end of the day, there's levels, dude. There's just levels, and when you're going in there against a super tactical fighter like Lerone Murphy, I feel like there is that side that maybe Pico could catch him with a shot and knock him out. For sure, because Pico has the power and the ability to do that. He's got great boxing. But as good of a wrestler as he is, I don't see him taking good guys down and controlling them. So I don't think he's doing that to Lerone. And I don't think Lerone's going to have a lot of success grappling him. So I think this plays out on the feet. And outside of Pico landing a big shot or mixing up the boxing really well, Lerone Murphy's got decent boxing as well. He's the better overall striker. Good elbows, good knees, good kicks from the outside, good footwork. He's not just going to be standing in front of Aaron Pico like a lot of these guys were doing in Bellator PFL. So you can have all the practice, all the coaching, all the reps, but when you get in there for the actual fight, it's different. And being in a co-main event in your debut, dude, on a massive pay-per-view, it's a massive spotlight to be in. There's a lot of pressure on Aaron Pico. I'd like to see him go out there and do it, but right now, from going back and watching more film, I was super excited when the UFC signed Pico. I was saying, look, the UFC's kind of looking at him as a hitman here. Sure, he could go out there and land a KO. Sure. All this coaching and all the adjustments that he's making, it could pay off. But right now, Lerone Murphy, for a guy that people are complaining is boring, which it doesn't really bother me too much because I appreciate the tacticalities that he brings. I feel like the finesse, the technicality that Lerone brings to the game, I just think it's going to be too much for Aaron Pico in his debut. And in a way, like Mobstar has underrated striking and he's a good wrestler, but there was the thought that Pico could stop the takedowns, keep it on the feet, and maybe land that knockout shot. To where Lerone Murphy, he's got a different kind of skill set, man. He fights like Leon Edwards, right on the back foot, a lot of feints, making you think, making you react, and then drawing out those reactions and capitalizing. And he doesn't make a lot of mistakes. I know he got dropped by Dan Ige, right? So that's where it kind of gives hope for Pico to land that shot. But at the end of the day, Dan Ige, is he better than Aaron Pico? That's yet to be seen. That's yet to be seen. I feel like Pico's going to be a little bit better than him, but even at that, I just don't know that it's going to be enough to beat Lerone Murphy. I feel like Lerone is the more complete fighter at this point, and we've seen him in there against some of the better competition in the featherweight division, where there's a lot of unknowns about Pico coming into this, man. And right now, I got to go with what I've seen so far, and that's coming to reality and being like, I feel like Lerone Murphy is going to outpoint him and win a 29-28 decision. Maybe Pico lands some big shots and takes a round in there, but I feel like the smart, savvy style that we see Lerone bring to the table, I feel like he's just going to outsmart Pico in this fight and weaponize that UFC experience to get this one done. Give me Lerone Murphy. The main event, the one we've all been waiting for, man. And by the way, if you're enjoying this video, if you could please like, comment below, and subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. I am going with Khamzat Chimaev to absolutely bulldoze Dricus Du Plessis and get a submission in the very first round. Listen, I made a video talking about this. I've been very vocal about this. This is a batshit crazy fight, right? And what makes it so intriguing is the element of, if Chimaev doesn't get that finish in the first 2 rounds against Du Plessis, what happens when we get into deep water? What happens when we get into a 3rd round? What happens when we get into those championship rounds? Because I got to tell you, I don't think that this fight sees the judges' scorecards. I think it's either Chimaev goes out there, steamrolls him like I think he will, or if he doesn't and DDP survives, DDP's going to put it on Chimaev and I think get him out of there in those championship rounds, right? So that's what makes this fight so intriguing, is the thought of, can Khamzat run over Dricus? And if he can't, well, then Dricus in the later rounds, I feel like he could finish Chimaev, right? So there's this crazy intrigue on if this fight ends early or if it drags out, what happens. And that's what makes it so nuts, right? And DDP's been unstoppable in the UFC, man. For a guy that once was criticized for not having a good gas tank, right? He's got this funky, crazy style where he's jumping all over the place. It's like, what the hell is that? He makes it work. He's beaten everybody, right? He beat Strickland twice, submitted Adesanya, knocked out Robert Whittaker. He's got a crazy resume right now, and he's got all the confidence behind him. You hear him doing these interviews. I mean, this guy is supremely confident. But if you look at the Derek Brunson fights, if you look at when he got taken down by Robert Whittaker, you look at some of the positions even Darren Till had him in, man, like, if that's Khamzat, it's over, especially the Brunson fight. That's like the most legit wrestler that we've seen, DDP face was Derek Brunson. And Khamzat Chimaev is light years ahead of Derek Brunson. He's a way better wrestler, way better jiu-jitsu, way more danger when it comes to finishing the fight. He's got dangerous power on the feet, too. Like, it feels like DDP knows coaches like, Khamzat, I wouldn't even give Khamzat a pro license for his stand-up. I feel like that's, them underestimating his stand-up to where you got to be careful because with the level change feints, Chimaev might be able to catch him with a right hand or something. But I feel like maybe they're afraid of the grappling of Chimaev. And they're like, maybe we could, play into the ego, see if he'll just stand with us. That ain't going to happen. Chimaev's going to come out, do what he does, shoot that fast takedown, get a hold of DDP, and he's going to be like, you're going to need to show me that you could stop this, Dricus. And I just don't think that Dricus can. I know that Dricus was out there submitting a whole Gracie team. It all sounds great, man. But at the end of the day, this is MMA, brother. And when it comes to MMA grappling, nobody right now is better than Khamzat. And when you combine that with a super explosive guy like Chimaev, with the supreme technicalities, the way he transitions and flows from position to position, you just can't make any mistakes. You can't make any mistakes. And DDP was making so many mistakes in the Brunson fight, dude. And yeah, he could improve. Sure. But I feel like DDP's clumsiness, right? A lot of the awkward, unorthodox stuff that he does, that just doesn't help you when you're on the ground, right? That just doesn't necessarily work there, right? And he utilizes good technique at times, but relies on that brute force and strength to get out of some of these positions. And I just don't see that working against Chimaev. I mean, Chimaev's bringing in guys like Pat Downey, Abdul Rashid, right? I mean, he's bringing in these high-level wrestlers from Russia, man, and training with those guys to prepare, that are big guys, to prepare for DDP. And I just feel like the speed, the technicalities of Chimaev when it comes to the grappling is on a different level, man. And that initial onslaught that Chimaev brings, it's like when Conor McGregor, right? He'd get in your face right away and overwhelm you and not allow you to get a feel for the fight. That's what Chimaev does. He puts you in a tornado right away to where you're panicking, trying to figure out how to get out of it. And then it causes you to make mistakes because he's fast and he doesn't really make any mistakes at all, and he will capitalize. He's super well coached, man. Chimaev's just not a wrestler. He's a complete MMA grappler with really, really good jiu-jitsu skills. And we see that. If you watch him rolling with Luke Rockhold, look how good his jiu-jitsu is, man. That was basically a straight jiu-jitsu roll, and he was dominating Rockhold. We know how good of a wrestler Chimaev is, right? And if it gets stuck on the feet, Chimaev's got pretty good striking. Right now, this ain't Gilbert Burns or Usman, right? Which is where the intrigue plays out, to where if DDP survives when we get into the later rounds, I feel like he could finish Chimaev because DDP's a better striker than Burns and Usman. Even though it doesn't look as technical, he's got good power. We saw him knock out Robert Whittaker. He was having good success against good strikers like Strickland and Izzy. That 50-45 performance against Strickland was very impressive. We know how good defensively Strickland is. But Chimaev's got underrated striking. Good straight punches, good power in that right hand, some decent kicks. And while he might be the more technical striker, I just feel like DDP still has the edge there. And when it comes to the ground game, we know that Dricus has good submission skills, but I just don't know that it's enough to beat Chimaev, man. I feel like Chimaev's aura, his aura, man, the explosiveness, the confidence, and the technicalities and the speed that he's going to be operating at, I just feel like it's, you can prepare all you want for it. Like when guys would prepare for Khabib, but then when you get in there, you know exactly what to do, but it just doesn't matter because it's just different. Chimaev is a generational talent, dude. He's an elite specialist on the ground, man. He just is, and he does it, and he just flows so well from position to position. And I truly believe that he is just not going to respect DDP's ground game at all. He's just not going to respect his ground game. Then he's going to shoot a takedown right away, put him on his back, get him up against the fence, take his back, start the leg ride, get to the back, force DDP to scramble to where maybe he can catch him in a darce. Maybe he does get that rear naked choke. And DDP's a hard guy to submit because he's got the, those big, he's big. He's got that kind of, big old neck. Right, so sometimes it can be hard to get in on those guys, right? And the longer the fight goes, and you become a little bit more slippery, you could get out of some of these positions. But I just don't know that we're going to get to that point, dude. And as much as I would like to see kind of a drug-out fight and see Khamzat get tested a little bit, see more of his striking, I just don't think that we're going to get to see it in this fight. I feel like a lot of people are hoping for this crazy back and forth. I just don't know that it's going to be that, man. And when you run through a guy like Robert Whittaker, who we saw have outstanding, how good he did against a guy as good as RDR, it just shows how different Khamzat is. It just shows. And when you put Usman in that much trouble and 10-8 him in the first round, we've never seen Usman in those positions, ever. Right, and to go out there and outstrike Gilbert Burns. I know he was in some trouble there, but you got to see his power. You got to see he's got some decent striking. But I don't feel like that's what Khamzat's coming to do in this fight. He's not going to get away from who he is. He's going to go in there and do what he knows, and that is shooting a takedown very fast, getting a hold of Dricus, and going to be like, you're going to have to show me, man. And I feel like Khamzat is going to be willing to live and die by that sword in this fight. Because we see guys, right? Remember Diego Lopez gets the big title shot against Volkanovski, got away from who he is. Even though he dropped Volk, right? He didn't pressure him. He didn't go after him. We see guys do that. Like, first big fight here, title fight. I got to be careful. I don't think Chimaev's going to think like that, right? And people talk about the gas tank. A lot of it's just more of a Chimaev just spends so much energy early that sure, he kind of gets labor. But he's training with Sam Calavita. I expect him to be in the best shape of his career. I feel like Chimaev's hitting his stride as a professional MMA fighter. He's, training more intelligent. I feel like he's kind of cut out the distractions. He's not riding around in foreign cars, carrying on like a lunatic with Darren Till. I just feel like he's just a problem, and I don't feel like anyone in this weight class has the answer for this guy. He's a generational talent. When you run through Whittaker the way you did, you put Usman in those kinds of positions, who no one's ever done that to Usman. Usman's known for being, the dominant grappler, and to dominate him like that, Chimaev is different. And we saw against Robert Whittaker, while he exploded in and spent a lot of energy, he was also very methodical in how he was approaching that. He wasn't being reckless. He was being smart. He was being patient. And I think that that's what we're going to see in this fight. He's going to force Dricus to make mistakes because Dricus is clumsy, tripping over his own feet, does rely on kind of that, brute strength. We saw him kind of doing that against Derek Brunson, to where you didn't really have to worry about any threat with Brunson. You got to worry about threats with Chimaev, dude. His darce is nasty. That face crank he put on Robert Whittaker, his back takes, the leg ride, the knee ride. I mean, everything that Chimaev does is so high level, man. I just feel like he's on a different level there when it comes to DDP. I just feel like he is. And like I said, if DDP could somehow survive and drag this out, I do favor him, just like a lot of people do. If it gets into those later rounds, I do favor Dricus Du Plessis. Not to say that Chimaev can't go out there, put on some sort of clinic, win a back and forth decision or something like that. Maybe he catches him with a right hand, right? Because Dricus is going to be so reactive to trying to stop that takedown that Chimaev could land a good, powerful right hand like we saw him do against a guy like Gerald Meerschaert. We saw him knock out Ikram on the local scene before the UFC with an uppercut. Chimaev's got good striking to a degree, good power. So I could see that possibly happening. But I do think that he goes out there, shoots on Dricus Du Plessis, and runs right through him, man, with the grappling. He's a generational talent when it comes to this. He's a specialist, and you can prepare all you want. But when you're in there with Chimaev and you get taken down and grabbed by this guy, I just feel like it's something that no one in this division is going to have the answers for. I got Chimaev by first round submission. But if you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Let me know what you think down in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you do not miss an upload. I would appreciate it. See you next time.